But let's talk trades now, because obviously Chris Paul had that big saga with the whole LA stuff.
Fuck the league on that one.
And David Stern. But we're talking trades. Trades? And one guy that came up in our Clippers talk a while back is Omer Caspi of the Sacramento Kings. And one thing that Ricky's brought up as well is after December 15th, players who just recently signed a contract in the most recent offseason can now be traded on those deals. So that will just help add assets to deals. And we're bringing up Omer Caspi because we're not saying he's going to be the biggest name traded here, but he's a guy who can be a valuable asset.
Unfortunately.
I don't know about that. I mean, we talked about Boogie. But he's a guy who is a valuable asset for a team off the bench because of his three-point shooting. He's been up and down this year, but he's also been injured. But in the past 2 seasons, he's been shooting over 40% from three. What team, if you're looking at a team who's a contender right now, could need a three-point shooter like that and add Omer Caspi to their team and make them push them over the hump?
Well, I'm going to give some love to. This was a comment I think earlier this week. We got it from Jose Gutierrez, where on our Celtics video he said, "Hey, what if they went and got out a shooter like Caspi?" And that's a team where it's like very interesting. I mean, you have JJ Redick from the outside, but other than that, it's Blake. Like Davis said, he's not spotting up from three. DeAndre Jordan's definitely not spotting up from three. Yeah, but it's more of a mid-range jumper, not a three-point line.
He's a great mid-range player.
That could be, to me, the Clippers are a team that needs some outside shooting. Is Caspi the guy? I have no idea if he's like the one where you're like, give me more of Caspi. But they do need shooting on that team to eventually help them because, as we've said many a times, this is now a three-point league. You need guys who can shoot the three-pointer to have success.
Yeah, and plus looking at that starting lineup, I mean, Jamal Crawford's going to be your guy off the bench who can kind of shoot. I mean, he can
get hot.
He
can get hot, though.
He's lost his touch. I mean, shooting 31% this year, but obviously, he's been the sixth man of the year for 5 years straight now, right? And something ridiculous like that. And that's sarcasm. I know someone's going to comment, you fucking moron. But really, outside of JJ Redick, outside of Chris Paul, you don't have that three-point shooting. And when you look at that starting lineup of Chris Paul, JJ Redick, and then Blake and DeAndre Jordan, there's obviously
there's a fifth guy on that team, I think.
Well, there's that huge drop-off from Luke Mamba Mute in that starting lineup because Mamba Mute isn't a bad player per se, but he is a bench player.
He's not quite on the level of the other 4 people you mentioned.
Yeah, and when you say, all right, you're gonna be going up against the Warriors, where you have Luke Mamba Mute going up against Kevin Durant. Weirdly enough, I'm gonna take KD there.
What?
But adding a guy like Caspi, yeah, you're not getting that much defense here, and he's mostly known for coming off the bench, and there's some injury problems here. But if you're adding a guy who can shoot 40% from three into a starting lineup that already has JJ Redick, Chris Paul, Blake Griffin, and DeAndre Jordan and Blake Griffin can pretty much split up half of that court, take it for themselves. Chris Paul and JJ Redick can take that other half, and you could just add Caspi to the other side. I think that makes this Clippers team so much dangerous if you add a shooter like that. But one guy I want to throw out there, because I don't think Omer Caspi's that hot of a name here, and I don't know if this guy's gonna be that hot of a name too. This might be like you guys ready to be bold? Jazz over the Warriors over the Jazz.
Oh, man.
A guy that I want to mention, and I don't think he gets enough love, is Brook Lopez. Brooklyn's been terrible of late, and Brooklyn is a bad team. I mean, they had a little bit of a spark there where they're looking like a good team here, but Brooklyn. You need assets. You traded all of them to Boston for KG and Paul Pierce, which is one of the greatest deals of all time if you're a Boston Celtics fan. But you have Brook Lopez. He's got 1 year left on his contract. I believe his contract's going to end in 2018. And he's got 1 year. He's got a year after this, so he's got 1 year of control.
Kind of like DeMarcus.
For 22 years. He's a DeMarcus in a sense of he's not as dynamic. He can't stretch the floor. He's not going to be a superstar here.
Yeah,
but he is an all-star
contract-wise.
Yeah, he's an all-star. He's a contract player, and then also he can be a leader. He's been stepping up for Brooklyn leadership-wise since he is the veteran guy on Brooklyn, and with Jay Lynn being out
by default,
default. But he also hasn't been bad in that position.
Sure.
Watching Brooklyn, at least for this year. So is a guy like Brook Lopez, I know he's not the sexiest name.
It's devalued big men, and Boogie is outside of the discussion because he has the shot from the outside. Brook Lopez is a down and dirty player, but he gets you points, he gets you boards, he gets you blocks.
Just got to mention real quick. Just got to mention Brook Lopez has kind of added that 3-point to his game. He's shooting 5 threes a game, and he's making 36%.
Seriously?
Yeah, I don't know if you've been watching Brooklyn or not.
Yeah, but
well, I mean, who
Brooklyn's been
doesn't
stepping
watch Brooklyn?
I watch Brooklyn. I've been starting to watch Brooklyn.
When you were talking about Brook Lopez, maybe it's him with Brooklyn, but I immediately thought of the Trailblazers because what's the big thing we mentioned in our preseason predictions? Man, they don't have a front court. They don't have anyone who can play down low.
They also don't have anyone who can play defense.
It's one of those things where I immediately was like, Portland could be a team where it's like, do we go for DeMarcus Cousins? Nah, that price might be a little bit too high. Let's go for Brook Lopez, who might be, I would say, actually, I am going to say it. You would give up less for Brook Lopez than you would DeMarcus Cousins.
I mean, you're still going to give up a 1 probably,
but
and
it would
then
be less
something
than
else.
DeMarcus.
You got to give up a future one too, because if you're looking at Portland, you're not going to get. You're going to be looking at like a 15 back pick.
Yeah, it's not the most valuable thing.
Probably at least
especially by adding Brook, you assume they're going to get better. They're not going to be a lottery team.
Exactly, and with a team like I was going to call New Jersey, Brooklyn. It's a team that really does need to get younger, and they did try to make those trades as well. Trading Thad Young to the Pacers, getting a pick from them, having a pick as well in the first round, getting Karis LeVert from Michigan. So the thing with Brooklyn is, I think that having Brook Lopez on that team, while it will help young players grow, I think it's actually hurting this team. So I think Brooklyn, it's an easy decision to be, all right, let's ship off Brook Lopez. And I think Brook Lopez moving to a team like Portland or just a team in general, I mean, looking at it, I think Portland's probably the easiest plug and play here when you're looking at a team and saying, all right, you need down low help. Bring in Brook Lopez, who's not only adding a shot from the outside, but is just a good player down low. Another team that might be interesting in some ways.
The 76ers.
I was going to say Charlotte. That's close.
Are you telling me the 76ers don't need another center?
They don't need another center.
Dave just wanted to talk about the 76ers.
Someone disagrees with you.
He does. I know. But looking at that, I think Portland or a team like Charlotte could be an interesting fit here for Brook Lopez. And I think if we're looking at big names that can possibly be traded before the trade deadline or All-Star break, I'm looking at Brook Lopez.
I know this won't happen, Sean, but I want to ask you a hypothetical.
Yeah.
Give me your best package or best kind of tinfoil hat theory that the Warriors would say, what, Zaza, fuck yourself.
Money
We're
doesn't
going
exist.
after Brook Lopez.
The money doesn't exist.
Money.
That's why I said put your tinfoil hat on.
Klay
Find me a way where that
Thompson.
could work.
Klay Thompson for Brook Lopez and
Well, hold on. Let's look at salaries
Jeremy
here.
Lin.
Because Brook Lopez is making $22 million a year.
It's not possible.
I mean,
it's just not.
There were the rumors, and I'm using air quotes, rumors
it's
of Klay Thompson.
It's actually
being-
just not possible.
Sean Livingston. I need to go to the trade machine for this. I don't know why you're throwing me under the bus here. I don't think that's going to happen. I'm going to write off the Warriors. I don't have the tinfoil
That's a pretty
hat
safe
like
bet.
Ricky Widmer.
I just tinfoiled hat.
What other names besides Brook Lopez, besides Omar Caspi, are kind of sticking out to you?
You know what just hit me? For Omar Caspi should go to the Knicks. They need a backup small forward who has an outside shot.
Are you saying Sasha Vujacic isn't a good backup small forward? How dare you?
Oh man,
How dare you?
I'm sorry I've offended you. I apologize.
You've seen his hair?
I'm just saying that would be a good fit. I don't know.
I don't disagree. And New York has been, but New York also has been jailing, so you might not want to throw a wrench into that.
Why not?
All right.
Yeah,
They've got the Euro
Knicks.
bench. Who cares?
I'm going to throw out this, and
Just
this
add
was
to it.
actually
Exactly.
This was actually
fits.
from last week, but we couldn't bring it up because we didn't talk about trades. There was, according to Bleacher Report's Rick Bucher, Tom Thibodeau is looking to. He's getting very impatient with his young stars and may deal one for a veteran. And here's the big quote: "Who he can trust and help him win now."
Uh-oh.
So Tom Thibodeau might
looking for a
D-Rose?
former player.
It's either D Rose, it's either Jimmy Butler,
D-Rose.
it's either Luol Deng, it's either Taj Gibson.
Okay, stop.
Whatever former bull you want to pull.
It's clearly Joakim Noah.
It could be Joe. Could be
Jimmy's
Joe.
out.
Yeah, Jimmy's not going
They're
anywhere.
not trading
It's
Jimmy.
Taj.
The value's
Taj
gone.
is the guy that you would look at
Taj is the guy, and then
because he's the only one that.
You
Because
could put
think
Cat
about
at the 5
former
and then
players
Taj
that
at
he
the 4.
trusts.
Yeah, you could put Taj at the 4, Cat at the 5, but that means he's going to have to trade a young player.
But one
maybe you
young
look at
star.
Shabazz. well, I don't think you're going to need a young star.
You're
Maybe
not.
Shabazz Muhammad or possibly Gorgie Dang, who's going to get kicked out.
And this is what the tweet says.
I understand what you're saying.
Young stars.
Okay, but they're not going to kick out Zach LaVine. They're not going to kick
Zach's
out
been
Andrew
blowing it
Wiggins
up.
for Taj
God, no.
Gibson, and they're not going to get rid of Cat for Taj Gibson.
Well, I'm just
you gotta
trying
look
to
value
figure out what young star means,
Okay,
Sean.
and young star means a young player. Gorgie
Yeah.
Dang or possibly Shabazz Muhammad if you're looking up at value-wise, because Taj Gibson isn't going to pull in an Andrew Wiggins, shockingly. He's not going to pull in a Zach LaVine. He's not going to pull in a Karl Anthony Towns. You could write off those three right there. Maybe if things break, it's not going to be Chris Dunn either. If things break, maybe Ricky Rubio, if they do trust Chris Dunn enough, which I don't think if he wants to keep veterans around, I don't think that's going to happen. I really think you're really looking at Shabazz Muhammad or Gorgie Dang, because Dang will be kicked out of the starting lineup anyways if Taj is brought in, and you kind of need power forward help for the Bulls, but he's not really a power forward.
See, the one thing I disagree with there is I think if Tom Thibodeau's looking to trade young talent, there's no way he gets rid of Rubio. Why would you get rid of a veteran?
That's what I said.
Yeah,
that's what I said. If he wants to keep a veteran around, then he's not going to get rid of Rubio. I think that it's all well and good that he's saying these things, and if we're only sticking to Bulls players here, I mean,
well, who else? If it's a play, because they're saying it's a player.
Let's go
trust.
old school veteran from the Celtics. Then
Maybe.
he wants Rondo or I don't know,
Could
something
go after
crazy.
Paul Pierce. Still in the league?
No, God,
Still
no.
in the league?
God, no. Oh, God,
He
no.
can trust him.
Yeah, we're going to trade a young star for Paul Pierce, who's retiring after this year. God, that's
No, I don't know.
brutal.
That doesn't seem to have any clear lines on where they're going with that. I'm going for the obvious one. Where do you think? There's rumors about Nerlens going to the Raptors. They're a little short-handed up there. Terrence Ross could be a luxury that they could give away. It was rumored, so I don't know. I'm thinking that. Look, we've been talking about Nerlens going for the past year now. I think he is definitely the odd man. Actually,
Well, it's not just him. It's do you trade him? Do you trade Ja?
Well, obviously
really,
one
those
of the
are the two.
two.
You're not going to trade the process.
you don't dare trade. Don't even bring his name up in this discussion.
Remember how we used to
I'm
add?
offended.
We used to add him in before this season started. It used to be those three. Now we're not talking about him. Dave.
We used to. Have you seen him? But I mean, one thing too. You also
Get
have.
Dave all hot and bothered over here.
I think that with Ja or Nerlens, it's going to be one of those two, but it's really where does he go? You bring up Toronto, I think with the power forward fit, that makes sense because you were constantly bringing up power forwards. I mean, last year they had fucking Luis Scola as their power forward. So I think a fit like that would make sense, but then you also don't want to stunt people like Jakob Poeltl there, and also the Raptors might not need it. They might not.
Yeah, that's the other thing is they're doing quite well without him, and he's gonna come back from his injury somewhere. They're rumoring early December. So
And really the
right around the
question is,
corner.
if you're making a trade when you're in the East, it's all right. Should we give up this much to possibly try to beat the Cavs, or will this help us beat the Cavs, or how much
Well,
will
I mean,
this
with
push us
Caleb
towards the Cavs?
blowing it up right now, you could use a defensive stopper like Nerlens Noel.
But how well is Nerlens going to be able to play perimeter and just kind of stay out there?
I think Nerlens.
But more of Caleb isn't
him
going to be dominating inside. Caleb is going to be a guy
he
who's
won't
going to be
get
stretching
17
outside.
to 20 boards a night.
Fair enough, but I mean, you also have Tristan Thompson, and I think Tristan Thompson showed last year that he can out rebound Valanciunas,
Well,
and you don't have
for
Bismack
one
Biyombo
series
as well.
For one series.
Let me ask you this, Dave, and this is kind of piggybacking off of yours. I'm looking at an article for Brandon Knight, and one of the teams that CBS has on there, 76ers.
No one wins in that trade.
A Nerlens for Brandon Knight, kind of a swap, or like a
that
job
reminds me
for
of-
Brandon
Yeah,
Knight.
that's a terrible idea because you just drafted two power forwards. You have Alex Len.
But you can let them develop
Alex
under
Len,
Nerlens Noel.
I think I'm done with him.
No,
I think he's
it's
a bust.
It's more
Brandon
Ben,
Knight?
it's
No,
more
Alex
Bender
Len.
and it's more Bender and Chris are the ones that because Alex Len he's going to be the 5. He's the unless you want Tyson Chandler being your
Tyson
your
Chandler's
5.
yeah, but you can't
He's
move
the
that.
ageless wonder.
You can't. Tyson Chandler sucks.
Ageless wonder.
Used to be the ageless wonder. Now he sucks. Now he's an old man.
Nerlens comes over to the Suns. If he came over to the Suns, he'd be a 4, and it'd be really. Do you want to say, hey, here's Nerlens at the top, Chris? You can now be the backup behind him to just gel. And on the 76ers, would they pull a trigger to bring in a Brandon Knight to give them a score now that theirs is sitting there with a foot injury. Is that what Ben Simmons is? Injury on the
Ben
side.
Simmons isn't a scorer anyway.
Broke his foot.
But the polarizing star that they brought in to be Magic Johnson, as Sean would say.
Also, maybe real quick, in the 9 games Tyson Chandler's played, he's been decent.
I was gonna say, dude
The
plays.
ageless wonder.
He gives you
back.
nothing special, but at the same time, he's not a bad player. His contract was awful,
His contract's horrible.
but the dude is not bad. He's a consistent center. Look, I was thinking about that, and actually, that's a weird combo. But it's trading trash for trash from each team. It's what don't we value? Brendan Knight, I think I've said it a couple times. I don't know if on the air ever. I don't think he makes his team better around him. He's a selfish player who in no way benefits his team. With him on the floor, yes, it gives them better scoring, which, I mean, is just absolutely absent from the 76ers at the guard position. So maybe it could help them. I don't know if it helps them in the long run, though.
And one thing, too, speaking of Brandon Knight with this is, when do you give up on a player? And it's a question, and I'm asking this seriously. I'm not saying that Brandon Knight's done and he's not going to have a successful NBA career, but when you look at what he's done, I mean, he's been traded from Detroit, he's been traded from Milwaukee, he's been traded from Phoenix. Now, again, he's in trade talks here, and he's only 24. I mean, he's been in the league for now 5 years, yet you're still talking about a player of, all right, what does he bring to his team? Is he going to bring enough to this team? In 5 years, he hasn't shown enough where you're like, okay, this guy is going to be this part of our team where, he's good enough to be a starter, but he's got guys in front of him like Eric Bledsoe. If you go to a team like 76ers, then he's not going to have that much kind of competition there. It might be the best spot for him, but he really doesn't have competition in
Because
Milwaukee
he can kind of be
Detroit.
the guy without the process would be the guy. I didn't want to make Dave angry.
Well, you got the
over
process, and then you got Ben Simmons coming in, too. So, I mean,
Well, I'm not saying Brandon Knight's going to be the guy, but at least a starter.
oh, yeah, he comes in instantly and gives them more scoring than they have. The problem is he is a volume scorer. He's super selfish, and I don't
Injury
really...
prone.
Well, there's that, too. There's that small problem of him not playing a full season yet. Whatever. You want to go that route, Sean?
One final name, throw it out there that can possibly get traded, or a guy that you are going to say he will be traded. So a guy that you want to throw out, or a guy that you're saying you want to put down the hammer, say this guy will be traded before the All-Star break.
Mine's not a guy. Mine's going back to Brandon Knight just
It's an
really
idea.
quick. Well, it's a team, and it's one that, because I looked at the CBS article, and it's a team we just talked about, and the author, Matt Moore, brought up the Pelicans in the sense that I know I said, hey, you were not going to go for a Brandon Knight because you have Drew Holiday and Tim Frazier, but what he kind of talks about is how Knight would fit in as maybe a shooting guard who could also run the offense for the Pelicans. So to me, it's not like I'm saying, hey, this is a player that needs to go. Maybe that's an idea that we see where maybe a team like we talked about the Pelicans that needs something say, hey, let's make a run for a Brandon Knight who can be a shooting guard instead and run the offense if we need him to, if we don't trust Frazier.
Dave, final thoughts here on this trade talk. We're talking trades.
I did a little more research, Ricky, just in the meantime, and yeah, there are solid rumors that it looks like Deng is the one that Tom Thibodeau is looking at.
That'd be huge for the T-Wolves.
And possibly the Bulls being involved to kind of move some pieces.
Well, of course the Bulls would. Of
course.
The Bulls want to see if they can get Chris Dunn because they couldn't get him in the draft, Dave.
Oh, my God.
Well, okay, well then, if that's Taj seems like the biggest guy out here. You got
Taj would go to the
Deng,
Lakers.
Taj. So Taj going to the Lakers, which,
Right? It would be Deng would go to the T-Wolves.
Where's Julius Randle going
What
to
would
play?
the Lakers get?
Where's Julius Randle going to play?
You move Taj
even
to
know.
you make Taj at the 5. I don't. Maybe you have a dual thing of Taj and Julius.
I mean, everybody's playing
before.
small.
I think
anyway.
I've brought up before that the Lakers could possibly bring in a young 5. Got Gorgie Dieng. Dieng goes to the Lakers. Lakers ship Dieng to the Timberwolves, and then now I lost it because I don't know how the Bulls are involved. We'll see.
Yeah, no idea. But
I don't know how the Bulls
crazy
are involved.
rumors for sure.
Just to end this podcast, Ricky, I did find a way to get Brook Lopez to the Golden State
let's hear
Warriors.
this
I want to hear it.
Andre Iguodala and Sean Livingston for Brook Lopez. That's the only thing that will work cap-wise. So, yep, that's not happening, Ricky. So, sorry.
I think the Nets would do it. I don't know. If the
You
Warriors
mean
would.
Chandra Livadala?
Chandra Iguodala, the 5th best 6 man in the NBA according to our rankings, which was by Real GM. Go to realgm.com. It's not a sponsor, but anyways, that's going to wrap up this podcast. I'm Sean Anderson. Thank you so much for joining us and listening on Blog Talk Radio. If you liked it, please check out patreon.com/mostvaluablepodcast to support us a little bit more. If you're also on Blog Talk Radio, don't forget to check out our YouTube channel, youtube.com/mostvaluablepodcast. You can check out all of our videos. When we do video podcasts, you can see our lovely faces. But for Ricky Widmer and Dave Oster, I'm Sean Anderson, and we will see you next week.
Thank you for listening to this MVP podcast. Follow us on Twitter @MostValuablePod for more great podcasts.